Hello everyone, I'm Michelle and I'm here with Andrea Fredrickson to talk about coaching. So Andrea, you've worked with leaders all over. So tell us, when you think of a leader, what are some things that you look for or you see in a leader when they're coaching?
So I've seen coaching from every extreme, from the coach who thinks they're coaching, but what they're doing is they're simply responding to a question and that's it, and not helping a person learn, or they're just telling them what to do. To the other extreme, that they're really doing a good job of challenging people and they are asking good questions and getting that person to really think. Because ultimately, from a coaching perspective, what we're really trying to do is help a person become better at whatever they're doing, or to do it more independently than they were doing it before. So I've seen the gamut.
Gotcha. Well, tell us a little bit about your philosophy in coaching.
So philosophy for coaching includes a couple of different things. One is that both informal and formal coaching is appropriate. So the informal coaching, that time where there's just a moment where you recognize somebody needs some help with something and you can start asking them some questions or doing some, using some probing statements to get some things, to the formal side where we're having a formalized conversation, we're talking about business goals, we're also talking about maybe some behavioral goals that we're working on. It's just not the drive-by, but it's formal. The other part of my philosophy is that I believe that people need challenge and be disrupted a little bit in order to grow. And so it can't simply be just answering questions and keeping things as status quo. It's always about a little bit of challenge in that process.
Good. Well, so walk us through some steps.
So there's a lot of steps that we could take. In fact, it could be a full day conversation if we wanted it to be, but we've only got a few minutes here. So we'll just talk about a couple. First, one of the first steps that we have to look at when we're coaching is identifying what is the goal that you're trying to accomplish, or what is the goal that the person who's talking to you is trying to accomplish. So if I am the person's manager or leader, I might have a goal for the other person to identify processes or identify information on a report that tells us we've got some problem coming up. And I want them to do that independently, because what they're doing otherwise is waiting for me to identify what the problem is, and I just tell them what I need to do. So my goal is to get them to do the identification more independently. So make sure you know what the goal is before you go into the conversation. And make sure sometime in the conversation you let them know what that goal is. You can do it at the very beginning. You can say, okay, so normally what we do is I identify a problem and you find the solution, or you just do what I ask you to do. In the future, what I want you to be able to do is take a look at this report, identify some of the symptoms, some of the trends that are going on, and bring me, here's what you're seeing, and maybe some solutions. So let's walk through how we go to do that. You can do that at the beginning, you can do it at the end. But it really doesn't make any difference as long as that's communicated. Another component is making sure that what we're doing is helping the person discover the answer as opposed to just telling the answer. So in this scenario that we mentioned before, I might give that person a report and say, hey, take a look at this report, see if you see any trends that tell you that we may be having a problem coming up if we don't address it. Or I might send them an email with that report and ask them the same question and say, what else might you see if you looked at, column 3, 4, and 5, if you combine those? Is there something there that's telling us a story? But giving them some time to think through that, so that when we do have our face-to-face conversation, that we can start discovering what that person sees. If the person sees exactly what you want them to see, that gives us that great opportunity. It's like, hey, that's exactly what I was looking for. Keep doing that kind of thing. If they're not coming up with the solution that you think might be the right answer to what you're looking for, you may ask a different question or help rephrase to focus that person. You may look and say, tell me how you came up with that solution, or where would be another place that you could find that information if you were looking more closely. So be ready with questions. Make sure you have questions ready and available. In the end of that conversation, make sure that the person understands what they are expected to do moving forward. Sometimes we leave a conversation because we know what we expect, but the other person doesn't know that in the future they're the ones that need to be doing this, and we're so using our scenario that we've been using today. So next week when we have our one-to-one, I want you to take a look at the report. I want you to come up with some ideas of what you see as far as trends, and maybe even some solutions that we should be paying attention to. So just those are the few of the basics that I would say that we should pay attention to.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. Well, thinking of our audience, what would be one piece of advice that you'd like to share with them?
Practice. So we have people who do things over and over and over again, and they get better at them as they go through the process, right? So coaching is no different, but I know people who don't practice coaching, they just wing it. So before you go into a situation, especially the formal coaching, where you can really be intentional and be prepared for the conversation, think about what is the goal you're trying to accomplish. Does the person know that? And make sure they tell them. Practice asking questions. Make sure that you have a set of 3, 4, 5 questions that you can go to until you get into the habit. And remember, when you're asking questions, don't use questions disguised, or solutions disguised as questions. Like, so that's the right answer, right? It's like, that's a question, but that's not how you want to go through the process. And sometimes it's not even a question, just making sure that you're using those other statements, like tell me how you came up with that, or give me an example of, but be practicing those things over and over and over. You get better at it. I'm work in progress like everybody else is, but practice makes better.
Good. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and thank you everyone for our quick talk.